Where did I see that rack-mounted GPO set?
You'll never find me here.
It was around here somewhere. Ah! Excellent. Perfect. That'll fit on my workbench nicely. So in this video, we're going to fit these GPOs to my workbench, which is sadly lacking power outlets. And I have to hunt around the shop for extension cords and power boards and what have you. So today we're going to modify this to fit my workbench. I'll throw a shot up here what I mean. But in order to do so, we have to make some modifications. This is designed to fit into a 19-inch rack mount server cabinet or equipment cabinet you commonly find in IT rooms and what have you, data centers. These are designed to have devices plugged into for power distribution, and now today it's going to come in handy. But the problem being, these will be facing the wrong way once fitted into my workbench. So what we want to do is lop off these brackets, turn them around, tack weld them back on, and then use these to support the power outlets facing outward. Keeping in mind we need to keep enough room so this exit point for the main cable has got plenty of room to route around the leg of the table. All right, let's get started. So to give you an idea, the intent is to have the power outlets mounted about here, and that will provide enough power outlets for this end of the bench, and I won't run out. So basically just need to sit out probably 2 inches from the inside edge of this leg, and we'll TEX screw these brackets once they're turned around. We'll TEX screw into the leg. All right, let's do this. So as we're going to be welding around the vicinity of this enclosure, we're not going to take chances about any heat affecting the internal wiring. So what we're going to have to do is separate out the face where the GPOs are mounted from the main body, and that's done by these 4 rivets being removed and separating out this section, and then we can work on turning these brackets around, cutting and welding and doing what we need to do without having to worry about the internal wiring. That's simply done just by drilling off the heads of the rivets, and once they're removed, then we can just tap out the remaining piece. They might fall inside, but we can retrieve them afterwards. That doesn't seem to be big enough drill bit to completely remove the head, so we're going to go step up a size. Next drill bit up, so we want to remove the head of the rivet, just like that. Unfortunately, the hats of the rivets get stuck on your drill bit, but never mind, we'll just keep moving on. That's 2 removed. 3, 4. Just a side note, when you do remove the tops of rivets, they tend to stick and get pushed up on the drill bit, and they're difficult, very difficult to remove. So what I tend to do is just grab a set of linesman's pliers, stick the section in the most serrated part of the plier, squeeze down as hard as you can, turn the drill on and retrieve, and there you go. All the hats are removed and we can throw them in the garbage. Once the rivets are removed, then we turn our attention to the rear cable entry. And you can tell it's just the compression gland pushing down onto the jacket of the main cable in. We can normally back it off by hand, just like so. And we give it a bit of a wiggle, and we'll just sort of separate those fingers that are clamped and compressed onto the cable. And we should be able to get that to float out that way. We pull out the front face of the GPO.
Maybe a bit stubborn.
Just tell that we've still got some remnants of the rivets there. So what we'll do, we'll get a pin punch and just punch those through, and then we should be free to pull out the front face. Okay, any old garden variety center punch should do the job. That's out. And now we should be able to freely remove that front face. Look at that, beautiful. Now, you might have noticed earlier when I was drilling out the rivets that the drill bit went quite violently inside the unit. So what we must do now is double check we haven't pierced and taken out any of the wiring inside. And looking at that, just around the holes, so you can see in there, anywhere where the holes are that we've come through, we'll just make sure we haven't nicked and taken out any of the cabling, and that seems to be all good. So now what's left to do, we're just going to remove the 3 wires from this point, taking note of where they come from. Obviously this is pretty straightforward because it's color matched. So we've got blue to blue, brown to brown, and the earth to earth, and that's no problem. And then we've got the main earth, which is screwed and fastened to the back of the chassis here. And then we just remove that and we can separate this half from the front half. Okay, we've got a bit of a snag here. So what's happened is that we can't get to any of the screws for these terminals because of the way they face in this channel. So what we're going to have to do is take the front face. Well, I believe the front face will come off. Hopefully, we'll just find out. It seems to be separating nicely. Oh, yep, there we go. So there's the back half of the GPO. Now we can get to all the screws to remove this main cable. So we just back off slightly. And what I might do is just nip them back up once the cables have come out, because just to keep things nice and neat. Blue cable. Pretty straightforward. And then last but not least, our brown, which is our live, at least down here anyway, and they'll land down under where everything's upside down. Okay, we'll put this section aside because we're not going to need to work on this, because we're only really worried about the back half, and that's what we'll be modifying. Okay, that leaves us to remove our cable from the back entry in this chassis. Just easy as that. And now we can take the gland off, but I think I'll leave that because the amount of heat that I'm going to possibly need to weld these brackets back on is going to be very minimal. And we're only really going to spot weld, so we're not doing anything crazy. I don't think we'll create enough heat in this section to affect the plastic gland. So we'll just get to cutting, we'll flip these brackets around and we'll tack weld them on and go from there. You don't have to tack weld, you can sort of rivet, drill and rivet if you like, but I think in this case, you know what? I think I will rivet because that's less permanent than welding. Just in case I want to reconfigure something in the future, we'll drill and rivet. We'll just cut, invert, drill and rivet, and away we go. Now that we've settled on riveting, there was no need to strip this down to a bare chassis, but anyway, we've done it now. We'll just continue on. Just goes to show my videos aren't planned. Okay, we'll draw some straight lines in so we've got a line to cut on. So now we've removed the brackets from their original orientation, we can now change them to swapping it around to the back side so we have the front face of the GPOs free. So now all we have to do is drill some holes, something like that, in both this bracket and in the part behind it. That way we can throw some rivets in there and then secure that bracket in its new position. We'd do the same for the other end, and then we've got our GPO outlets in the correct orientation facing outwards, and we're not worried about having cables routing around the wrong way, and it's ease of access. And the benefit of having them under the bench, any swarf or cuttings or anything that is generated on top of the bench won't accumulate over the plug areas, or won't accumulate on the pins of the plugs that are already in, and could pose a hazard down the track. Because our brackets are 15 millimeters in width, I've opted for a 10 millimeter in from the edge to mark our holes. Just enough to give us a 30 mil gap in the middle. We'll do that for both halves. Each bracket will form its own template for the end it's going to be mated to, so they don't have to be mirror images of each other. It's not that critical. Okay, just got to center punch those and drill the holes. Okay, as soon as we're using 3.2, well actually 3.3 millimeter steel rivets, I'm going to be using a 1/8 drill bit It's the closest I can get without going up the next size in metric, which is 3.5 in my drill set, which will be too big. So we'll use a 1/8 drill bit. Perfect. Now we'll just translate those new holes to our main body of our GPOs and rivet it in. Okay, using some vice grips to keep everything relatively true while we drill the holes, we'll just line up our chassis to our new bracket position. We'll use the vice grips to keep everything in a good position there. Raise everything off the deck so we can drill it and drill our new holes. Okay, as soon as that's now done, we can put in our rivets. 1, 2. As you can see, the rivets have come through perfectly on the other side, and we now have our bracket securely fastened to our new position. Rinse and repeat for side 2. Done. So what we'll do now, we'll reassemble the GPO assembly and look at how we're going to fasten it and fix it underneath the bench. Okay, now we replace our rivets that we took out earlier. Okay, last but not least, we'll fasten our cable gland we took off earlier and make sure that's nice and snug and not cross-threaded. There we go. And that concludes our bracket relocation. And we'll make it better for this sitting against the leg of the workbench, and these will be now facing outwards and more accessible. Win.